Ya, jangan.
Manis. The library.
Can I get them? Oh, right.
getting delayed before it starts.
Morning staff, councillors. Welcome to our workshop and briefing session for today. Are there any declarations from councillors before we start? No? Right, we'll move on to item 1.1, the water wastewater star rating methodology. And Ms. Roburn and Mr. Watson.
You've got a chair on. Yeah. It's got a brief cameo performance here, councillor. So. Very simple, Mr. Mayor. Rob's just handing out just a slight update to the actual presentation that we're going to be talking through. A bit of a tweaking to make it a bit more comprehensive for you. Look, today what we're going to do is talk through where we're at in relation to the star rating with regards to water and wastewater assets. So as you're now becoming more familiar with the whole star rating philosophy, hopefully this will gel. Very similar principles. So this is simply about providing a relatively easy concept, if you like, as far as rating criticality of assets and enabling then the asset management plans to be developed and then marry into our long-term financial planning. So having said that, I'll hand over to Mr. Watson and Mr. Stone to actually walk through the presentation.
Thank you, Graham. Morning, everyone. So I guess the intent of today is more of an information sharing workshop with you all regarding specifically water and wastewater asset management. The presentation we'll run through here, start off with revisiting the star rating concept, some of the criteria we will consider for specifically water and wastewater assets, give you a case study, I guess an example of how that might be applied for a particular asset type, walk through the next steps for this particular asset class, and then we will give you a quick update on our asset management improvement plan, which is predominantly delivering updated asset management plans at the moment. So I'll hand over to Rob. Rob Stone's developed and is working with Shepherd Services on the development of the star rating for water and wastewater. He'll take it from here. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Good morning. Like Liam and Graham mentioned, it's sort of similar to what you've seen with the roads in terms of the concept around applying the star rating methodology, but applying that to the water and wastewater assets. So if we go straight to, you understand the approach, so if we go to the criteria, what we're looking at is just around how do we determine the star rating, and the criteria is, there's a number of criteria that inform that star rating. So there's items there around service level, asset condition, redundancy, environmental impact, safety, regulatory compliance, and the cost impact of that. So putting all that together, sort of out of that comes some ratings or criticality scores to then apply the star rating approach. On the following page, there's an example of the approach. And again, this is all being developed, but this is just the thinking of the methodology that could be applied to the concept. So the example, working down from the top, just very briefly, the reservoirs and towers, suggested star rating of a 5. Obviously, when you look at the service that they provide, it's pretty important. So working down to fuel stations, pump stations, there's a range of star ratings that could be applied there. But again, the intent is to conduct that criticality exercise to inform the star rating. So those criteria that I mentioned earlier, they'll be used to come up with a rating that then will link into a star rating approach. And again, they're just examples of the approach and some suggestions. But as we work through the detail in developing the asset management plan, a lot more will come out of that body of work. Okay, on the following page, we've got just an example of a water main, and this is probably the key one to understand the methodology. So using a water main is pretty easy to get the concept. So a 5-star water main obviously the link to a hospital and a school, that's more important than a 1-star water main down the bottom where it's, less than 100 mil water main, potentially, supplying one property and that. So that's just an example of how we can apply the star rating concept to a water main, and we need to do that across all the asset categories in water and wastewater.
So I guess to expand on that particular star rating, obviously a 5-star means that it will come with a whole set of intervention criteria that would be, within a break, respond within 1 hour potentially to repair that. Whereas when we go down to the 1-star, the intervention times would be much larger potentially. So that's
What do you call much larger?
well, I'll leave that. I think legislatively there's some requirements there as well, but it would be hours for water anyway.
Hours.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
weeks.
No.
Some of the things with the 5-star asset, like what will change against our current approach, are things like our condition assessment program and what we're accepting for a condition. So, if we determine we've got this 5-star asset, it's similar to the road example that Graham has supplied previously. We don't want to let that asset get down to a very poor condition because it poses risk and it impacts our service level. So there'll be out of this exercise will be what our condition assessment programs need to look like to be able to maintain or assess those assets, to understand their condition, because that's our intervention criteria, so they don't fall down to a lower service level than what we've agreed to.
So this would then have an impact on our renewals, so that
Correct.
5-star would have a higher priority for renewals than a 1-star.
Correct. Yeah.
If I can just expand on that, Councillor. So, as Mr Watson mentioned, is a significant amount of the water intervention levels, if you like, are dictated from a regulatory perspective. So we need to comply to actually to be a water service provider at the level that we are, which is over 10,000 connections. What we do from a water main perspective is have a look at the number of mains breaks we actually have in a certain length. And for a 5-star asset, for example, if it's the water main going down Mary Street servicing all the businesses and one of the key assets for the region, we would only accept a small number of water main breaks, which would then trigger a total replacement of that main. So it's actually simply saying that ideally we would never let a 5-star water main asset get to a point where it was regularly breaking and interrupting services to critical businesses. And that's why I've indicated things like hospitals, schools, etc., which I think is a no-brainer for everyone. So that criteria in relation to water mains breaks would be a key driver in setting then the asset management plan and long-term financial planning for replacement of assets, as an example.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Freeman, how long have we had articulated water in our regional and residential areas?
20 years after he was born.
Yeah.
Been around for a while.
Okay. Before or after you were born?
It's been around for a while.
I just wonder why we suddenly need a star rating on these assets when we've been doing this job for however long.
50 years.
I would have thought common sense would have been a lot to do with this job. You realise what's important and what's not important, and
Yeah, so I guess
why we spend so much time on these sorts of things when we don't, as far as I can see, we've been doing it for that long now, haven't really needed it.
Yeah, so for water and wastewater, it is basically there, right? The intervention levels, the service levels are there. What we're trying to do here is make it consistent across all of our asset classes, so that when we talk to you as the council about our investment strategies or our maintenance strategies, it starts to become consistent, so we can make the same decision across multiple asset classes. So I would say, sitting here, if we're talking water, wastewater, we're not going to reinvent anything. It's all basically there. We're just going to tweak it here and there to make it align with the star rating. But then as we move forward and we talk about another asset class, we're not talking about an intervention level specific to that asset. We're talking about 1 star, which then aligns with roads and water, wastewater and all our other assets, so that we can start to make consistent decisions. So I don't see it as, investing a lot more time into something we've already got. This is just pulling it together consistently, aligning it with our asset management plan now, which will be developed, and then we move forward.
Councillor, if I can just expand on what Mr Watson has said as well. The technology available nowadays and what we can do is significantly different to what we could do a couple of decades ago. The amount of data, the amount of, we've got water meters, smart water meters, for example. My view is that by pushing towards more of an intelligent water network where we actually have pressure sensors, etc., and get more into predictive analytics as far as water main breaks, we will get to a point where we can predict that that water main break is about to occur. So we can prevent unnecessary interruptions to businesses and the like. And there's many examples across the country where that's been successfully implemented. So this is about taking the next step forward and improvement, if you like, in the way that we deliver services with the technology that's available nowadays. So that's part of the...
Back when I was in kindergarten, when I was a good boy, I'd get a 1 star. If I was a really good boy, I'd get 2. And if you're the teacher's pet, you get 3 stars. And those stickers, and you put them on the back of your hand. I know that sounds quite amateur, but in the real world, the mature world, we use a word that's called priority. And people on the inside and the outside understand. In fact, people on the other side of the world knows what the word priority means. Your first priority, second and third. It's just makes sense. I mean, a star rating, if you get a new staff member that comes in and you say to them, oh yeah, that's a 5 star for that one. A 5 of what? 5 out of 10? 5 out of 15 or a 5 out of 5? Whereas if you start using the word priority and first priority, second, it means something and everyone understands it. Whereas a star rating, everyone has to get their head around what it is and out of what ranking. But that's my view.
Councillor Freeman.
I think you've just, Councillor Waldock's exposed one of the issues I've got.
Sorry about that.
I hope this is an operational thing that never comes back again. The council, this is staff managing assets. Assets are incredibly complex. I don't care what system you use, whether it's star rating or priority rating. These numbers are for internal use, I hope, and not for use with council. If they're going to be used for council, I'd immediately challenge some of them, like why are water fill stations a 4 when pump stations are only a 3? I wish you well with your system, but quite frankly, I don't think councillors need to be involved because we can debate a lot of these things. And I've just given you a quick example of one that I think is obviously challengeable, but I don't think it's our role to get involved in challenging how many stars you give an asset. I think you come up with the annual works program based on your professionalism, and that's where it should end.
Through yourself, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Freeman. Look, indeed, this is actually about bringing councillors along for the journey and letting them or assisting them to understand how we're actually managing from an operational point of view. It's as simple as that. So we're actually rating the criticality of the assets and taking on board Councillor Freeman's comments. We've got the expertise in order to do that. What we're doing here is actually explaining to councillors how we're actually approaching that. And of course, this then affects the long-term financial planning, which affects budgeting, which affects council's then endorsement or otherwise of budgets that we're going to bring forward. So that's the linkage, if you like, with regards to council decision-making and council endorsement, that it does directly affect the long-term financial planning.
Councillor Milne.
I'd actually like to thank you for bringing this so we have an understanding of operational. I do agree, though, we shouldn't be involved in decision making because I have no expertise on any of this stuff, so I'm glad that you guys are sitting there doing it. If this information once determined, because we are striving in our corporate plan to have a published set of service standards, this will feed into that service standard understanding that we can actually bang out to the public so they can come along with the journey as well. Is that what this type of process is getting to?
Councillor, the reservation is actually rolling out the actual star rating from a public facing point of view. We'll definitely be rolling out, especially from a water point of view, what our service levels are. In other words, what the reaction times for water main breaks, those sort of things, especially from a compliance perspective. But taking on board Councillor Freedman's comments, we do need to be considered and careful, if you like, in relation to the public facing aspect of this. So the idea is that this is actually an easy manner for us to actually communicate to yourselves as councillors that when we talk about a 5-star asset, everyone knows what it makes. And then it also then, as I said, impacts the long-term financial.
Point taken, Councillor Fredman. We've now identified a process that we think works. We've tested that with the roads, and that's something that seems to have had success. Now that you're aware of the process, we can now go on and make these things happen. We've got, as Councillor Fredman indicates, we've got the expertise and the right team to do this. And we'll review the format which we take it to you now, so that you've got the process, so we can make sure that future updates are more summary, or now that you're happy with where we're going. Thank you, elected members.
Councillor Stewart.
Just two things, I think. One is that, yes, fair bit of it is like operational level, but as councillors, we get lots of constituents asking us about when's this road going to be fixed, or water main, or whatever. And so sometimes we need to pass on an operational response, I guess, in a way. And so if it's something systematic like this, that would help. The other thing is some of the renewal projects, I imagine, would get over the $500,000 threshold where we have to do approvals or whatever anyway, or they certainly get into budget line items. So we need to have some sort of assurance that what we're approving is, in terms of renewal projects, is makes sense. It makes sense not just to us, but to the public as well. So while I tend to support Councillor Wardock in terms of perhaps using the term priorities rather than star ratings might be better, high priority, medium priority, whatever. I think the general principle is good and helpful for us.
Any other questions or comments, councillors? Councillor Polly.
I was just going to say, I get you've got the 5-star ratings, they've got 5 things, and there's a list of assets, and you're using a very educated guess as to where they go, right? So you're deciding which ones go into which category, and that's fine. But all I was saying was, in my experience with the hospitality industry and accommodation, there were 5-star hotels, but that's no longer good enough. You need 6-star hotels. Maybe the Director of Infrastructure or Community Services might be able to correct me on this, but I believe there are 6-star houses now. So whatever you got for 5 suddenly won't be enough. You're going to need some more categories. So just saying, you might want to create a few more, because as Councillor Fredman pointed out, is a water pump station a 3.9 or should it be a 4.1? So you might want a few more levels there. That's what I'm thinking.
Any other comments or questions, councillors? Thank you, Mr. O'Byrne. Staff, there's nothing else to add?
I guess in terms of this presentation, the next steps from here is we will continue to develop and refine the star rating service level methodology for water wastewater and feed that straight into our asset management plan. On the last page of our presentation, we've got the timeline for our AMPs across all of our major asset categories. So it's just a high-level update for councils just to show where we're at. So the transport AMP is underway and being built as we speak with those star ratings we've previously discussed. This now, water and wastewater will move into that phase following this initial discussion with yourselves. We'll now crack on and start building the AMP for this with these star ratings built in. So just to keep you in the loop, this is where we're at and we'll continue to progress forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll have a quick 5-minute break, councillors, before we go and break with we'll grab a cup of tea and take one.
So you special needs.